Greetings, fellow Final Fantasy players, and welcome back to the EOP world of Final Fantasy, and to another Final Fantasy X video. In today's theory, we are going to reshape a bit of the storyline of Final Fantasy X with one what-if question. What if Yuna never discovered that Seymour killed his father? Before I get started, these kinds of videos will be based on what I think will be the course of action of the story if certain things did or didn't happen, and I expect some of you guys to dispute or even disagree with some of the points I make. If that's the case, feel free to comment in the comment section below because I would like to hear your guys' take on some of these events. So, back to the topic at hand. To begin analyzing this situation, we need to create an alternate timeline in Final Fantasy X where Yuna doesn't figure out that Seymour killed his father. I can simply say that Yuna doesn't come across the sphere in Jyscal's possession, but that would be no fun. So we are going to create a scenario that starts in when the party exits the far plane. In this scenario, Jyscal still drops the sphere, but as Yuna picks it up, one of the surrounding Guado actually asks for the sphere as it is an unwritten rule in the world of Spira that the separate tribes deal with their own tribal affairs. Since it was never specified that the sphere was meant for Yuna, she gives the sphere to the Guado and they keep it, not knowing whether they looked at the content of it or gave it to Seymour for his help, thus keeping the secret entirely. Fast forward to their departure from the far plane, the party still concludes that there is a problem with foul play being involved in Jyscal's death since his being attempt to return to Spira, indicating that something, usually a powerful emotion or a form of unfinished business, has kept them from leaving to the next world. It is unlikely that it was for another reason because since it was reported he died in his deathbed, it can be assumed that he either accepted death or a summoner, likely his son Seymour, would have been there to send him. So the skepticism from the party remains, but without the sphere from Jyscal, they can only go off speculation. Regarding the decision of Yuna to marry Maester Seymour, Yuna would have still agreed to marry him for more than one reason, but the second reason would have been different. In the original timeline, she would agree to marry him with the front of bringing happiness to the people of Spira and giving them hope that the unity of a Maester and a Summoner, who was the daughter of a High Summoner, would be of hope and unity to the people of Spira. But her main reason would be to confront him about his father's murder and to convince him to turn himself in. This time, she would agree to marry him with the same upfront reason of giving hope to the people of Spira, but this time her real reason would be to question him in his involvement with his father's death. This information would likely be told to her guardians since this motive is not as confrontational as her original motive. The guardians, knowing her determined nature, would agree to her decision but would advise caution when confronting him, due to Auron and Tidus' mistrust of him and his true intentions. When it comes to the event in Macalania Temple, things would have gone more smoothly, as the sphere would have still been in possession of the Guado, and it would not have been discovered when one of the temple monks was going through Yuna's possessions, resulting in the party not knowing of the danger of Seymour, but they still remain skeptical. Yuna still gains Shiva, and she tells Seymour that she agrees to marry him, and he lets her continue her pilgrimage due to her request. It is likely that he would accompany her to Bevel as that is where the wedding is to be held, as well as Bevel Temple where Yuna would go down to obtain the Bahamut Aeon. However, around this time, likely after the wedding ceremony is finished, she would privately question him about the circumstances surrounding the death of his father. This can branch off two ways. The first branch off could be that Seymour would get confrontational with Yuna since he would see her as an obstacle if her skepticism leads her to the truth regarding Jyscal, and attempt to kill her as he did to his father, which would force Yuna to flee to her guardians and leave Bevel, confronting Seymour at the exit in which he would transform to Seymour Natus, and the rest of the storyline will go as the original. For the purposes of this video, we will go with scenario 2, where Seymour uses his charisma and his front of caring for Yuna, and simply deny his father's death, and say that his love for the Guado tribe and his desire to see them be included in the Yevon religion is what is keeping him in this world, that he would want to remain in Spira until he sees the Guado accepted by Yevon and its followers. Yuna would believe this and embrace him, implying that she is starting to grow feelings for him. Sorry Tidus plus Yuna fans, it is likely that the romance of them is not looking good at this time. While Seymour would agree to let Yuna continue her pilgrimage, he cannot officially join her as a guardian because of his duties as a Maester of Yevon, but would periodically check up on her and meet with her on certain parts of the journey for progress updates and see if she needs anything from him. The party's trek through Mount Gagazet would be smooth since they would not meet resistance from the Ronso, since Maester Kelk did not abandon Yevon and Yuna and her guardians would not be branded as traitors. But the fight between Kimahri, Biran, and Yankee would still continue since that is a personal issue between the three of them, and would still result in Kimahri emerging victorious over them. When the party reaches the peak of Mount Gagazet, they are caught by surprise when they are approached and surrounded by a combination of both Guado and Ronso soldiers, led by Seymour, Kelk, and Maester Keenock. In this timeline, Keenock still lives as he did not fully suspect Seymour of his treachery, as it was never revealed. Seymour declares that her guardians step aside and allow him to take her to Zanarkand personally, as part of his plan to become the next Sin. In his plan, he reveals that he killed his father as part of his plan, confirming Oren and Titus's suspicions of his true nature. This news comes at a great shock to the party and to the Ronso, especially Kelk Ronso, as well as Keenock. Shocked and disgusted to hear the new revelation that has come out, Kelk and the Ronso do battle with the Guado, who engage the fight with them, and a battle breaks out on the peak of Mount Gagazet between the Guado, led by Seymour and Keenock, and the Ronso, led by Biran, Yankee, as well as Yuna and her guardians. The battle in Mount Gagazet would feature a battle that mirrors the original Seymour battle that would have happened in Macalania, as Seymour would still be alive at this point. He summons his Aeon Anima after his Guado bodyguards are slain by the party and is defeated and still dies. This would mark the point where Seymour officially dies and the battle comes to a halt, with the Guado and Keenock fleeing with Seymour's body and the Ronso celebrating victory, with Kelk, Biran, and Yankee surviving the battle. The Ronso then give passage to Yuna and her guardians to go to Zanarkand and obtain the final Aeon from Yunalesca. They would encounter Seymour once after the battle, and this would be at the entrance to Zanarkand. He is accompanied by a group of Guado and a slain Went Keenock, who wanted to accompany him out of mistrust, similar to the events in Bavel. Seymour would then give a speech similar to the one he gives in Bavel, convincing Yuna to use him as the final Aeon in a more aggressive yet soothing tone due to them being so close to reaching Yunalesca. He would also point out that him becoming Sin would free Titus's father from his misery, as Titus and Riku still have the conversation they had in the peak in the original timeline, due to them looking for an alternative and a more permanent way to defeat Sin. He would then absorb the life force of the surrounding Guado, as well as the dead body of Keenock, and transform into Seymour Natus and fights the party, resulting in his defeat. The rest of the events after this battle still occur as they did in the original timeline, as the party still defeats Yunalesca, thus removing the only means of defeating Sin according to the teachings of Yevon, and encounters Seymour inside Sin, as he knows that since Yunalesca is defeated, he can no longer become Sin, and thus resorts to being absorbed by Sin and learn to control it from within, transforming to Seymour Omnis and losing to the party in the final battle between them, similar to the original timeline. Before I end this video, there is one more topic I want to address, and I have to address it because it will definitely come up in the comment section. When it comes to Titus and Yuna's romance, because Yuna and Seymour's marriage lasted a little bit longer than it did in the original timeline, and in that time Yuna may have had stronger feelings for Seymour due to their conversations when they spoke of Jyscal's death. Though it was upfront by Seymour, this touched Yuna as it resonated with her wanting to make the people of Spira happy, so the emotional impact on her was stronger due to the circumstances surrounding the reveal of his true nature, as she was more devastated by the truth. This would have still occurred in the lake of Macalania Forest, similar to the original storyline, but this would happen after the airship picks up the party from Zanarkand, and the cutscene as they visit Bavel after talking to Shelinda about Yevon being in disarray, and the followers not knowing what to believe, which would trigger the need for Yuna to be strong for her people. But inside it would be too much of a burden after the combination of finding out that the man she married and was starting to love was using her to become Sin and kill everyone, and being the strength of the people as they needed to end Sin emotionally devastated her, and she went to the lake, with Kimahri and Titus following her. Kimahri would allow Titus to accompany her at the lake, and we still see the scene between the two in the lake, which will finally solidify their love for one another. So there you have it, everyone. This would be my take of the events that would have occurred if Yuna didn't discover that Seymour murdered his father when it did in the original timeline. A lot of events would have changed, and the Ronso tribe would have still survived and flourished, but their hatred for the Guado would have remained similar to their feelings between Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy XII. Yuna would have still uncovered the truth and confronted Seymour, eventually defeating him, but would have been more emotionally distraught because she was starting to get closer to Seymour and would have developed stronger feelings for him had it continued. Let me know what you guys think. Do Do you agree with my viewpoint of the storyline as it plays out if Yuna never discovers Seymour killed his father? Or if your views are different, how would you think events would have played out? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and be sure to subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos similar to this. I will be sharing lore, theory, and gameplay videos on this channel, and you don't want to miss out on future videos. And until the next video, I wish you safe travels as you traverse in the world of Final Fantasy.